Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today, so let's talk about Dynamite. Let's talk about the viewership and the demo ratings for Dynamite this week. Down slightly, but still once again toppled Monday Night Raw in the key demo. So a lot to talk about there. Now, Wednesday's live AEW Dynamite on TNT reportedly drew 1.175 million viewers on TNT, according to Showbuzz Daily. Now, this is down over 10%, nearly 11% from last week's post All-Out episode, which was to be expected. I mean, last week's show drew over 1.3 million viewers. So I think people that thought that Dynamite was going to increase once again were probably a bit misinformed. So we were expecting a bit of a drop, and it looks to be nearly 11%. Now, of course, last week's episode was the second most viewed show in AEW Dynamite history. The only show that was viewed by more people was the debut episode back in October of 2019. Dynamite drew a 0.44 rating this week in the key 18 to 49 demographic. Now, this is down over 15% from last week's 0.52 rating for the post All-Out show. The 0.44 key demo rating represents around 574,000 viewers who watched the show from that 18 to 49 demographic. As I mentioned, this is down over 15% from last week's 681,000 viewers in the 18 to 49 demographic that the 0.52 key demo rating represented. This is according to WrestleNomics. Now, it's interesting to note that Dynamite beat this week's edition of Monday Night Raw in the key demographic once again for the second week in a row. Dynamite drew a 0.44 rating with 574,000 viewers in that demographic, whereas Monday Night Raw did a 0.43 rating with 556 viewers in that key demo. So we're talking, just edging out Monday Night Raw. So they beat them, which is still very significant, but still, it's a big deal. Last week, the two shows tied with a 0.44 key demo rating, but Dynamite did indeed have more viewers in that demographic with 681,000 as opposed to 678,000. Now, Dynamite ranked number one on the night in the cable top 150 this week with that 0.44 rating. This is the fourth week in a row that Dynamite has ranked first in the cable top 150. Dynamite ranked 26 in viewership for the night on cable, which is down from last week's 19 ranking. Now, Dynamite drew the third highest viewership of the audience of the year and the fourth highest audience in show history. This week's show, as I mentioned, was down over 11%, whilst the key demo was down over 15%. But this week's Dynamite viewership was up over 32% from the same week in 2020. The key demo was up nearly 30% from the same week last year. Of course, that 2020 episode went head-to-head with NXT. So, of course, a lot of numbers there, and a lot of people are going to be like, what? Overload, lots of numbers, a lot of information. The key things to take away from, I think, this news is obviously that it went down, and I think that was to be expected. I think, again, if you thought that it was going to remain steady from last week, that was just never going to happen. It was post All-Out, of course, an All-Out that was just ginormous. It's the most bought show in AEW history, and the most successful show in their history, the most successful pay-per-view since WCW went out of business in 2001, the most successful pay-per-view, I think, since WCW in like 2000 or something like that, maybe even 1999. We're talking massive, massive stuff for AEW over the course of the last few weeks, but it was to always be expected that there was going to be this dip after All Out. The big thing, though, of course, will be next week. I think next week, with that Grand Slam edition of Dynamite, the card that they have, the crowd that they have, the atmosphere that they will have, they have a really, really, really good opportunity to do their biggest television audience that they've ever done. With a main event of Bryan Danielson, Kenny Omega, plus the other matches on that show, it's going to be a really, really, really big deal next week. And I think they're hoping that whilst this week was still over 1.1 million viewers, the aim is to get back to that 1.4 million viewers, which was the debut episode. If they can do better than that next week, then they're laughing. I mean, to be honest with you as well, Monday Night Raw this week did just over 1.6 million viewers. Now, can AEW do that next week? Probably unlikely, but you never know. And when it comes to the key demo, that's a big deal. And again, I know people will look at that and go, oh, it's not a big deal. Monday Night Raw still outdrew AEW and this and that. You're an AEW mark, you're an AEW shill, all this kind of stuff. The idea that more people in that most coveted demographic, and I know people say you only bring up demographics when you talk about AEW. We talk about them when we talk about any television program. But certainly, television executives and advertising executives pay attention to that. They want to advertise in the show that's viewed by the most of that audience that's going to buy their stuff or whatever, or the one that's going to make them the most money. That is that demographic. And the fact that AEW for 4 weeks in a row has been ranked number one, which Raw sometimes is, and SmackDown has been as well for a long time. But certainly, when you've got more of those people watching that than Monday Night Raw, which has been on the air for nearly 30 years at this point, in the same time slot on the same night, that's a really big deal. For a company that's been around for just under 2 years, or just over 2 years now, rather, it's a really, really big deal, and it's going to go from strength to strength. As I mentioned, if you're looking at year-on-year growth, the fact that Dynamite was up over 30% from the show last year, it's insane. It's insane. And the key demo was up nearly 30% from the same week last year, and that was a show that had competition as well. It's just, it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating, and it's great news. It's great news for AEW, something they can be very happy with. And as I've mentioned, next week's show is ginormous, absolutely ginormous for AEW, and they know that, and I think they know that by the card that they've presented. And as I mentioned before, I think it's a realistic possibility, I do, that they could do their best viewership audience ever. I think that's a real possibility. If it doesn't happen, will they be disappointed? Well, again, the fact that the post-all-out show did 1.3, considering that card is far better than what they would have presented for the post-all-out show, I think they'll be hopeful. They'll be very, very hopeful. And again, when it comes to the key demo, it'll be interesting to see what Raw does on Monday, because they're going to be like, well, we don't want to have 3 weeks in a row where the key demo is just going to be beaten by AEW, even if it's narrowly. You know, this is how these things start. Eventually, you creep up, and then you get just above them, and then eventually, if you're going to keep going like that, eventually AEW will pass. And I've been saying this for a while, and again, I know people will say, well, overall viewership, and that's true. That's very, very true. But again, last week with 1.3, and this week 1.6, we're talking about a difference of 300,000. That's a possible swing at this point. That's not out of the realm of possibility. And again, WWE's got strong competition on Monday nights now with Monday Night Football. And I know there's people, I saw on Twitter, that were saying, oh, it's not fair to compare and to rag on Monday Night Raw because they've got competition. Well, it's not a case of this is anything new. Raw's always had competition on Monday nights when you get into the fall with the football season. That's nothing new. So the idea of, well, it's unfair to compare because they've got strong competition, well, people were doing the same with AEW in the summer when they were preempted, and they were going, look at how bad the numbers are, or pissant company, all that kind of stuff. You know, you always take competition into account, but to say, well, you can't compare because Raw has competition, well, Raw's going to have competition until February next year then. So we're just not allowed to compare anymore. It's pro wrestling at the end of the day. You know, these people you're going to have to compare, unfortunately. Now, again, you can like what you like, but people are going to point these things out, and that's just the case. Speaking of AEW as well, reportedly morale, unsurprisingly, is said to be very high right now. It was noticed by PW Insider that locker room morale is very high in the company as it prepares for next week's Grand Slam edition of Dynamite on TNT, which will air live from Queens and New York City. Word going around is that everyone in the AEW locker room wants to be on the Grand Slam card because the feeling is that this event will be a huge milestone for the company as it will be their New York City debut and their biggest crowd to date. It was also said that AEW talents realize that the Grand Slam edition of Dynamite will outdraw WWE's recent return to Madison Square Garden for Super SmackDown by 4,000 to 5,000 fans. WWE announced 14,425 fans in attendance for Super SmackDown at Madison Square Garden, but the actual attendance was actually closer to 13,000. Arthur Ashe Stadium in Queens has a capacity of 23,771, but the reported capacity for Dynamite will be around 18,692. It was reported last week by WrestleTix that more than 18,000 tickets have been sold for Grand Slam. So we're talking about, less than 700 tickets left available, which is amazing. They're selling out stadiums at this point. Unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. Now, on a related note as well, the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey announced on Twitter that Dynamite this week was officially sold out. Which again is very, very impressive. Very impressive because that's a bigger arena for AEW. Usually they do like those like college basketball arenas, the ones that are like 8,000, 10,000, but that arena's an arena, the Prudential Center that WWE runs. And I think again going forward, it goes back to the discussion with Chicago, doesn't it? And the United Center and the Now Arena, that going forward, I don't see why they wouldn't run the United Center, because they can draw in those big markets where it's New Jersey, and the New Jersey crowd was red hot as well this week. But certainly when you've got New Jersey, New York, Chicago, probably Philadelphia as well, Texas, those bigger markets, they can draw, and they're drawing very well in them. So I think we're going to get to a point where they are going to start running those bigger arenas, but they have to be careful not to lose the atmosphere that we're kind of so used to when it comes to Dynamite and Rampage, you know. Sometimes part of the problem with those WWE arenas is that you kind of lose the atmosphere. But to be honest with you, you saw this past week that the atmosphere was even better because there was more people in. Same with the United Center when they ran there in Chicago. So I have no doubts about AEW's ability to draw. And obviously morale's very high right now in AEW because they're doing the best business that they've ever done to date. And I think it's obviously only going to get better. We have an update as well when it comes to plans for Miro going forward. Now, future plans for current AEW TNT champion have seemingly been revealed, with him defending the TNT Championship tonight against Fuego del Sol on Rampage. Now, we won't say, obviously, the results of tonight, but Fuego del Sol leveraged his brand new car to get another opportunity at the TNT Championship. Now, of course, Miro has already defeated Fuego once before, which was on the debut episode of Rampage on August 13, after which Fuego was giving his AEW contract. Now, Dave Meltzer has stated on the Wrestling Observer radio show that the plan is for Miro to defend the TNT Championship against Sammy Guevara very soon, and this is building towards that. Guevara was the man who handed Fuego his contract in the ring when he was signed, and they were in a segment together on Dynamite when Fuego made the challenge to Miro for the match tonight on TNT. So I like this. I like the idea that Sammy Guevara is going to be the next challenger. To be honest with you, though, whilst I think Sammy Guevara would be a great person to take the title off of Miro, I really have no desire to see Miro drop the championship anytime soon. I think he's tremendous, and I think it's the best presentation we've seen of Miro, obviously, in AEW, but it feels the most relevant and the most big that he's felt in a while, unless the idea was for him to drop the TNT Championship and then transition into challenging for the AEW World Championship. But I don't see that happening anytime soon because Kenny Omega's still the champion. Again, unless you're having Omega drop the championship relatively soon to, say, a Hangman Page, and then you can have Miro versus Page. Now, is that a world title picture feud? I don't know. But I think Miro's doing great what he's doing right now, and I don't really have any desire, like I said, to see him drop the title anytime soon. But on the other hand, I think Sammy Guevara is a perfect TNT champion. I do think he's a perfect TNT champion. I think it does elevate him. Again, I know Tony Khan's like, it's not a mid-card title. It's not a mid-card title. It is. It is a mid-card title, and it's exactly the title that Sammy Guevara should win because he's eventually one day going to be the world champion. I have no doubts about that either. So Guevara versus Miro for the TNT championship, that's going to be a lot of fun when eventually that happens. So I'm interested to see those plans going forward. Dan Lambert has been talking about WWE recently, and American Top Team's Dan Lambert, he has become notorious for his weekly rants on AEW Dynamite, recently had an interview with Cage Side Seats. Now, during the discussion, Lambert delivered his unfiltered opinion on the current WWE product. He said, quote, "I'd like to hope it will be back to the Monday Night Wars where everyone keeps stepping their product up to outdo the competition. Call me biased because I'm with AEW right now, but I don't see WWE stepping up their game. Bobby Lashley is a real dear friend of mine. I love the guy. I've known him for 15 plus years, and I'm not even at the point where I'm fast forwarding through Monday Night Raw to get to his shtick. I don't even hit play. I'm not a big fan of WWE's product these days. I still think they have some really good talents over there, but I just have a hard time watching it." Now, he continued on, saying that despite some of the things leaving a bad taste in his mouth, AEW is the source of the wrestling boom going on. He also emphasized how AEW gives you so many different styles of wrestling to appreciate all at once. He said, "The wrestling boom, in my mind, is what AEW is doing. I'm watching their product and watching their show. Even though there are certain things that I don't like, some of the things I say in my character I actually believe. But there are so many other things that they have. Talk about having a buffet of different genres of professional wrestling. You go to one AEW show and you see every style you like and a couple of other styles you don't like. WWE is more of the same for me." Now, Lambert, this is the big headline here, believes that WWE has gotten egotistical because they have diehard viewers that will tune in regardless of the quality of that product. He said, quote, "I see WWE as being somewhat egotistical in their approach, that they are who they are and what they are." He says they don't have to change anything or do anything differently, and people are still going to watch. I think it's a little bit of an opposite effect, because I think a lot of people support AEW just because they want to stick their finger in the eye of WWE that's run roughshod all these years. And I think he's kind of right there. I do think he's kind of right that that's kind of the thing with WWE. And for years, again, they've had the monopoly and they've done this and they've done that. And I don't criticize WWE for the sake of criticizing them. I praise what I like and I criticize what I don't like. And obviously WWE, and it's not really their fault, but for years they had no competition, so they got comfortable. And now they are having this competition once again. Now, again, is AEW drawing as many viewers as WWE? Not yet, but not yet. It's yet. They've only been around for a couple of years. That will take time, and this trajectory, it will happen. Not for SmackDown, but certainly for Raw, and then who knows what happens eventually. That's going to be the situation, and I don't think he's wrong at that point. Now, as far as Dan Lambert goes in AEW, I know a lot of people don't like him. I've been indifferent on his speeches and rants that he does and all this kind of stuff, trying to be Jim Cornette and that kind of thing. But in fairness, like I said when I did the video yesterday, I thought his segment this week with Jericho was actually quite entertaining. I just hope it ends at the Arthur Ashe show, because I don't care to see it that much longer, to be honest with you. Finally, CM Punk met the crying fan that went viral during his debut on Rampage, The First Dance. Now, the viral CM Punk crying fan recently got to meet Punk himself. Now, you may remember, of course, how a fan went viral for crying during Punk's big AEW debut on Rampage last month at the United Center in Chicago. The cameras I'll get there eventually. The cameras scanned the crowd as Punk made his long-awaited return to pro wrestling and caught several emotional fans, but one man stood out. The fan was seen crying for Punk's return, and as he pointed to the ring. The man quickly went viral and was defended by several pro wrestlers and Punk himself after he was mocked by other fans. But in an update, a photo has surfaced of the man meeting Punk during AEW's All Out weekend earlier this month. The man is seen wearing an all-access badge in the photo that you can see right there, indicating that he received the VIP treatment at the pay-per-view. Punk also commented on the fan during an appearance on ESPN Chicago last month. He said, quote, "I'm a Chicago guy. I'm a Chicago sports guy. I cried when the Cubs won the World Series. I cried when the Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup. The time that I was alive when they won the Cup, not back in the 60s. You know, it means a lot. And I think it means a lot because I'm so attached to Chicago and sports especially. I understand. So anybody who's making fun of that dude, you're making fun of me too. There's nothing wrong with being emotional at a sporting event or anything you like. I'll cry at a Marvel movie." So there you go. There you go. Good for him. Good for him and good for CM Punk. It's a nice story to end on. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all these AEW news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, get the rankings, and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or having come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.